And thank you for coming in on one of the warmest weekends so far this year. The weather's getting so much better, which is great. And yes, I do host the show Sunday Bubble every Sunday morning at 9 o'clock on GFN. It's kind of early, but if you can get up and listen, that would be great. So that's one of the things that I do here in Korea. I've been in Korea since the end of August in 2003, so 8 years now. And in that time I've learned quite a few things. I've had a very good time here. I really like living in Korea. I'll probably continue living in Korea for quite a while, actually. It's I like it. It's good here. So basically what I want to do today is kind of invite you to a different way of thinking and a different way of being. If you are living in a different culture, or you're studying somewhere else, or even just here, if you live here, it's a different way of looking at your life and a different way of looking at the way you think about what you do. So, the title here, maybe questions are the answer. He said I'm going to share some strategies, and the main strategy is just to ask questions. I could finish it there because that's kind of the main point. It's about being open-minded, asking questions, being aware of what's going on around you. And also realizing that your point of view, any decisions or conclusions or judgments that you have made actually kind of create the life that you live, the life that you create for yourself. I'm saying too much. And I'm on the radio. I should know better. When I came to Korea, I was very, very excited to come here, and that excitement actually transferred into a fantastic first year here. A lot of people come their first year and they have a difficult time because they come over and they think, nobody speaks English, it's going to be terrible. North Korea is really close. My mom is really worried about me. And a lot of people told me those kind of things when I came over to Korea. I actually had one person ask me if I was going to North Korea or South Korea. I was like, South Korea, of course. So the way that I kind of looked at it, and my attitude in coming into living and working in Korea, and now studying a bit of Korean, we'll get to that soon, came from kind of my willingness to take a different look at the way things were and the way I wanted them to be, the way I wanted things to be when I got here. So, there we go. So answers, we're going to talk about answers a little bit, and what kinds of things are answers? Any judgments or decisions or conclusions that you have. Okay, those are all going to be considered answers, kind of a finality. Okay, we're going to go through a couple of sort of famous decisions and judgments that people had previously, and the limitation created by that, and then we'll get to some more sort of personal ones, and then in the end, we're going to take a look at the way that questions can change that. So, the first example here, between 1922 and 1933, the Coca-Cola Company actually had a chance to purchase the Pepsi-Cola Company. And they could have wiped out their main competition, 80-some years ago. They didn't do it. And now, at least in the US, Pepsi and Coke are kind of that's their main competition. Not so much in Korea, but... Another one, the Decca Records Company in England auditioned the Beatles, and the gentleman who was in charge, his name was Dick Rowe, he said the Beatles were not going to be any good because guitar music was on the way out. And he rejected them. His conclusion was, guitar music is finished, and so we're not going to sign the Beatles. So instead they went somewhere else and they became the Beatles. Einstein, we all famously know, Einstein when he was young, he was considered to be a bit of a failure, a terrible student. I did a little bit of research about him, and he was actually worse than a terrible student. He did some pretty amazing things when he was a kid. He released a couple of bats in the classroom one time. Yeah. His teacher actually said to Einstein's father, "It doesn't matter what he does, he will never amount to anything." So his teachers kind of concluded that Einstein was an idiot, he was kind of dumb, and he wasn't going to go anywhere. Okay, this is a little more local. The SK Telecom Company, we all know, refused or snubbed or denied using the iPhone. They said, Korean people aren't going to use the iPhone, it's not made by Samsung, it's not made in Korea. So, KT said, great, we'll take it. And that was a decision that the SK company made that they regretted like 3 or 4 months later, and they still are recovering from kind of the way that the iPhone has infiltrated the Korean market. Okay, so let's look at, in our lives, some of the things that we have decided that might be limiting what we can accomplish. To be successful, I have to work for Samsung and or go to Seoul National University. Okay? So if you don't work for Samsung, then you're not considered successful. Okay? If you're not a doctor, you're not going to make a lot of money. English is difficult, or Korean is difficult. And we're going to talk about this quite a bit more because this is something that a lot of people have decided in Korea. And a lot of my students, I taught at Hagwon for a year, my middle school for a year, and then I was at Chosun University for 4 years. And most of my students, the first day, they would say, "Oh, teacher, English is so difficult." Okay? And that's a point of view that a lot of people have taken. It's a decision that they've made that actually makes it even more difficult because they've decided it's difficult. Okay? So, does anybody have anything that you can look at your own life and you can say, oh, I have made this decision, or I have a conclusion that I've made that is limiting what I could be doing? Okay? So, for example, I thought that studying Korean was really difficult. And I was told by so many people that learning Korean is difficult, studying Korean is difficult. Why would you do it? Korean people speak a lot of English. So for many years I thought, learning Korean is difficult. Now, let's talk about questions. So on one hand we have judgments, conclusions, decisions, things like that that are kind of limiting. And on the other hand is questions. Okay? Questions open up doors. They create space, possibility, and more choice. They empower and expand awareness and possibilities. Okay, they empower. How do questions empower? They empower people. If someone asks you a question, you feel kind of empowered. Like, what would you like to eat for dinner tonight? Oh, great. Like, I can contribute. Someone's asking me a question. Okay? Questions are great, for example, in relationships. Okay? If you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, ask them what their favorite flower is, and then when it's Valentine's Day, buy that flower. Okay? Ask them what their favorite color is. Like, asking questions, getting information. Okay, questions are the kind of things that are used in the leading edge in basically every field. Medicine, science, any kind of study, any boundary that's broken, or any invention, or any breakthrough comes from someone who's willing to ask a question. Someone who's willing to not accept the way that it is right now. Okay? Someone who's willing to say, I think something else is possible. Okay? What's that going to take to get to the next step? So, quick review. Judgments, decisions, conclusions, and answers are limiting. That kind of creates a box that you have to live in and operate from the box. Questions empower, expand awareness and possibilities. So that's kind of the basic framework I'm operating from, and that's where my title came from. I also thought it sounded kind of smart, but anyway. So questions and answers. So I'm going to give you some examples of questions that you can use in whatever the situation is. One question: what's going to make this easier for me? What else is possible? Are there any other possibilities? Is there a different way to do this? Can we look at doing something different here? What's it going to take for this to happen? What's it going to take for me to learn Korean more easily? What's it going to take for this to be more fun? What's it going to take for me to make more money? And how does it get any better than this? Now, these are just 4 questions. Okay? This isn't the entire list. You can make up questions. You can ask a different kind of a question. Okay? What's required here? Or what is this person asking from me? Exactly. Okay? So there's a couple of example questions. And so we're going to try this. I have a couple of statements, a couple of conclusions up here, okay, as examples. Learning English is difficult. So that's what we're going to talk about. Learning English is difficult. Let's look at the way that we could use these questions to change learning English into something easier for us. So what is it going to take to make learning English easier for me? Okay. How many people here go to a hagwon? Anybody go to an English hagwon?
Now?
Yeah.
Or before?
Or before. Okay, not a lot of people here. How many people have individual one-to-one English lesson with somebody? How many people watch English dramas on TV? So there are a lot of different ways that you can learn English. Now in my case, what's it going to take to learn Korean more easily? What's it going to take for me to have an easier experience learning Korean? Now there are a lot of Korean classes that are being offered in GIC, Cheongham University, Chosun University. There are a lot of people who are willing to meet me and practice Korean with me. But they actually want to speak English, not Korean. Okay. So, I was looking at this. Now, when I first came to Korea, I thought I should try and meet a really cute girl, and she can help me learn Korean. Okay? That doesn't work. It doesn't work. Because I'm more interested in spending time with a cute girl and not in learning Korean so much. Okay? Now, some people go to language program at the university and they're very successful and it works for them. Okay? That doesn't work for me. So I have to ask questions and say, what actually works for me? Okay? Now, I have found someone who meets me twice a week, doesn't want to practice English, only wants to study Korean, and she's married. So, there you go. So everything that didn't work before is now working. And I also changed my idea that Korean is difficult. And just looking at it from that different perspective has changed my attitude towards it, my attitude towards studying it, towards spending more time with it. Because if I think it's difficult, if I've decided that it's no fun and difficult, then every time I open the book, I just go, ugh. Okay? And I start studying with that frame of mind, and it's less productive that way. Okay? So, take a look at what works. Like, some people going to hagwon, it works. Some people, it doesn't work. They hate it, the teachers are terrible. Okay, look for a different hagwon. Maybe you want smaller classes. Maybe you want one-to-one instruction. So ask the questions. Okay? What's going to make it easier for you? Again, related, what else is possible? What are the other possibilities for learning English? Do you have to go to Canada for 2 years and study English? No. I've met a lot of Koreans who have never traveled abroad and their English is fantastic. Okay? But if you've decided that I can only learn English if I go to Australia, Canada, USA, then you're going to be depressed because it's expensive, you don't want to take time off from your job. All these other things create kind of stress for you, instead of saying, all right, what else is possible? If I'm not going to Australia, what's another option for me? Okay? So let's look at the next one. All of the good guys and girls are taken. Okay? So you don't have a girlfriend, and you look around and you say, all of the good guys are taken. Everybody has a girlfriend or boyfriend. They're all spoken for. Okay? So let's look at questions here. What's it going to take for me to meet this kind of girlfriend or boyfriend? Okay? Ask the question and get your mind opens up to different possibilities. Okay? Maybe you want to look at different places to meet them. Or maybe you want to start asking your friends or parents, okay, to help you out. Instead of just deciding that all of the great people are spoken for, they're all taken, then asking questions and being open to different possibilities. Okay? There are lots of places you can meet people. Okay? In the US, this is an example from a lot of years ago, meeting someone very casually in the US is pretty common. Okay? If you see somebody in the coffee shop you think is cute, you can actually go talk to them and say, hi, what's your name? You're cute. Or something. I don't recommend that. In Korea, if you approach a strange person in the coffee shop, generally, they freak out. Okay? When I first came to Korea, I went to a coffee shop, and there was a girl reading a book in English. I had read the book, and I thought, oh, I can go talk to her. So I went over and I was like, hi. She had no idea what to do. Okay? So instead of saying, I'll never meet anybody, I have to look at how does it work in Korea. What does it take? What does it take to meet a girl in Korea? Okay? It's not having a good line. It's not being handsome. That helps though. But you have to be introduced. That's the easiest way. The easiest way is to have your friend introduce you to somebody else. Okay? That's how it works in Korea. If I didn't ask a question, then I wouldn't know that, and I would be frustrated because everybody I went to talk to just ran away. Okay? Because I'm not so handsome. So, and the hair doesn't hurt. In this country, it's not so great. Okay. There are no jobs available. Okay? A lot of people look around and they say, I can't get a job, there are no jobs. Okay, that's not true. You can get a job delivering chicken. You can get a job delivering pizza. You can probably get a job cleaning toilets for somewhere. Okay? So first of all, saying there are no jobs available, that's a kind of broad statement. And it's a conclusion. That means you're not going to look for anything. If you say there are no jobs that I know of that I would like to do, okay, that's a little more open statement. Okay? Say, so you go back, questions here. What's it going to take to find a job that I like? Okay? So look at what kind of a job would you like? What are you willing to do? What are you not willing to do? Okay? And if you only want to be a doctor, and doctor is the only job for you, well, you're limiting yourself. Now, if you're willing to say, I'd like a job that makes lots of money, then you're open up to more possibilities. So being specific about what you would like, and asking questions to get to that end. Okay? Okay, next one. I can never get a date with E or E. Okay? Now, that seems pretty impossible. Okay? Now, I would like to. I think she's great. My wife said it's okay, because she's not worried. But looking at that and saying, I could never do that, means I probably will never do that. Instead, I could look at, all right, what's that going to take? It might take a lot of money. It might take a lot of connections. Speaking Korean is probably a good start. Making connections in the TV world or music business is a good idea. Okay? So instead of saying, I could never get a date with her, I could say, well, what's it going to take? All right, I'm going to have to do this and 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 pray, and then maybe. Okay? So, those are just a couple of examples here of kind of conclusions that people have made. Pretty common ones, except for the last one. English being kind of the biggest one. Now, in my time in Korea, I've actually formed new conclusions that have been limiting. Okay? For example, when I came to Korea, I was really excited, and I was like one of those new people. I was a new foreigner, and I was running around and climbing all the mountains and eating all the food and all that stuff. And kind of around year 4 or 5, I started to think, I'm not new anymore. I'm better than those people. Okay? Because I have the experience. And I know what sundae is. And I know that bandegi tastes terrible. And those kinds of things. Okay? So I started to distance myself from those new people because I was better than them. Okay? Now that's another conclusion that means I'm not meeting some great people. It means I'm not interacting with people who can contribute to me and who I can contribute to as well. Okay? So looking at the conclusions that I've come to, even in the last 3 or 4 years. So these can be something that you've decided a long time ago, or even something from 2 weeks ago or a year ago. So looking at the places in your life that you have decided something, and because of that decision, then you are limiting the possibilities for you in some regard. Now, saying, I don't like English, that's different. Okay? All right, well, maybe you want to study a different language. Okay? Maybe you'd like to do something different. But saying English is difficult, it changes the way you look at it and changes the way that you go about it. Okay? So, when I was teaching, I would try to encourage my students to not say that. They'd say, oh, English is really difficult. And I say, well, all right, let's try and make it not difficult or more fun. Or let's look at why you think it's difficult. Do you really think it's difficult? Or did you hear that from your parents? Or did you hear that from somebody else? Okay? So, looking at your decisions and looking at your conclusions about what's possible for you, and also looking at maybe where that came from. Okay? Did you hear that from your parents or your teacher? And is that really true for you personally? Okay? So, what's the next slide I have here? Oh, no, that's not it. What? Okay, so I actually was going to... Does everybody have a little white card? No? Not yet? No, I was just going to say, if they did, they could write down their own conclusions. But so I actually was going to do a little bit of a kind of interactive time here. Does anybody have another example of something that you think, like, I can't make money because I'm an artist, okay? Or I have to get married to be happy, or something else. Does anybody else have an example that they could give me, and we could take a look at the way you could ask questions to open that up to a different possibility? Yes.
Okay. So I have lots of problems. So I'll just give one example.
Okay.
Basically, just for example, I have some coworkers that I have trouble getting along with them sometimes.
Sure.
And so lately I've been finding that very frustrating. And it's actually interesting that you talk about this, because I also recently realized that I have to change my attitude about the situation. So maybe you could offer some advice about kind of working or doing some work, or kind of feeling stuck in that situation and realizing you've got to change.
Right.
yourself?
Okay. Great question. Fantastic question. I've also had a lot of coworkers that were not so easy sometimes. One quick thing to note. Does everybody remember the first thing that he said? The very first thing that he said?
He has lots of problems.
Yes. Okay. That right there is conclusion. I have lots of problems. Okay? And then he has to create the list to back up that conclusion. Okay? So you have to realize the power of what you say and the power of what you think. Okay? So did anybody have your parents, when you were younger, did your parents tell you that you were smart? Anybody have your parents tell you were smart? Did anybody's parents tell you that you were very cute or very pretty? Now, generally speaking, those children who hear that all the time from everybody grow up with a different concept of themselves. Okay? My parents never told me I was cute or handsome. I was very cute. But my parents did tell me that I was smart. And all through school, other students would tell me that I was smart. And my teachers told me that I was smart. Okay? So, I think I'm kind of smart. Okay? Now, I've met people who know that they're good looking. Okay? How do they know that? Because people have reinforced that in them and have told them that, okay, their entire life. So, I have lots of problems we'll talk about coworkers, but I just want to point out that saying that actually creates a life that's with lots of problems. Okay? So somebody who's like, actually, I don't have a lot of problems. First of all, everybody thinks they're weird because you're supposed to have lots of problems. And if you don't have lots of problems, that's a problem. Okay? So looking at that and saying, hey, my life is pretty good. There are a lot of great things in my life that I can be grateful for. There are a lot of things that I have going on that I never would have imagined. For me, when I was in the US, now probably 10 years ago, I thought, man, I would love to be on the radio in the US. But there's no way. How can I be on the radio? That's too difficult. It's too competitive. Anyway, so I kind of kept that in the back of my head. And then I gave up and I moved to Korea and then now I'm on the radio. Okay? Because I was willing to not have to do it in Los Angeles or not have to do it in the US. And so now it's shown up 10 years later. Okay? Alright, so let's look at the specific question about your coworkers. Okay? So if you have people who are creating difficulties for you like that, asking questions, for example, like, first of all, what is it specifically that is bothering you? Okay? And taking a look at if it's because they smell bad, okay? And then you look at, okay, well, maybe I should sit at a different desk, okay? Or they think I'm a bad teacher, or whatever it might be. So look at specifically, okay, what is it that's creating this friction? Okay? And then maybe you could ask them, like, okay, what could I do to improve the situation? And maybe not ask them, or you could ask another coworker, or ask the boss, or just acknowledging that it's not going as well as you like, okay? And then saying, what would it take to change this? Okay? Would it take a new job? That's kind of a drastic step, okay? But say, what could I do to change this relationship? What have I decided about this person that makes me not get along with them? Okay? Now, you're right, you can change the way that you look at it. It's a little more difficult to change the way that they look at you. But if you ask the question, it creates this awareness that they don't like you because they think you make too much money. Or they think that you don't have experience, or they think that your knowledge of grammar is terrible. Okay? So, being aware of their attitudes and opinions and their conclusions actually takes the weight off of you. And you can say, well, because of their limiting points of view, that's creating stress in this relationship, okay? But it's not because of me. I'm still doing the best job that I can, and so I'll let them have stress about it, and I'll just say, you know, it doesn't necessarily change the situation in the beginning, but the way that you look at it changes your attitude about it. Okay? Like, I've worked together with people who didn't like their job, and I would say, fine, don't go tomorrow. They say, well, I have to go. Like, no, you don't. Sleep in, go get some coffee, don't go to work. But I can't do that. Like, yes, you can. Actually, you don't have to go. Now, if you don't go, you might lose your job, but you don't have to go. You are choosing to go in the morning. Okay? Now, they might continue to go every morning because they want to keep their job. But changing just that point of view about their job changes their attitude at their job. Okay? You can do this with relationships or jobs or whatever. It's like, well, I hate my boyfriend. Okay, we'll break up with him. But then I'll be lonely. Okay, well, as long as you understand you're choosing to be with him and that there is another possibility, then it's going to change the way that you look at the situation. Okay, as far as the job or the relationship or whatever. So, I think the basic question you could ask is just like, what is this? What is creating this situation? Okay, and what can I change to do that, to change the situation? Okay, and if you realize that their limitation, kind of their baggage and garbage and whatever is going on, it's off your shoulders, and then you have one less of your many problems. Yeah.
Good answer. Thank you.
Thanks. I guess, yeah. So that's kind of how it works. When you look at a situation and you ask the questions, and when you ask the questions, you might get an awareness of something. Oh, that's what this is, or that's what this is. And when you receive the awareness of that's what it is, then you can choose to change it or choose to continue. Okay? So, yeah. Does anyone else have like one more example that we could use? See, you guys don't have lots of problems, right? Nobody has any problems. That's great. Good. All right. So I guess you have a bunch of white cards. Okay. So Rochelle?
Yes. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, you're welcome. I mean, you don't have to leave now. You can stick around. Because she's going to pass out some white cards. And in my experience in Korea, raising your hand in a group is a very uncomfortable experience. Okay? So I'll ask my students, like, what's your favorite color? And, like, nobody wants to answer what's their favorite color. Now, write it down is no problem. So she's going to pass out some cards. And if you have any questions or you have any situations that you want to see how that works, we can talk about that. Sorry, so go ahead.
Yes, so first, thank you.